It's time for this week's PrairieCast.
This week's PrairieCast is brought to you by Delta Dental of Iowa, who reminds you that you don't have to work for a big company to get big benefits. Delta Dental offers a dental plan to fit your needs, whether it is a single policy, one for your family, or one for the team at your startup. Visit deltadentalia.com to learn more about your many plan options. Hi there, and welcome to episode 76 of PrairieCast for February 28th, 2012. I'm Jeff Wood of Silicon Prairie News, and our panel today includes Tej Devon of Startup City Des Moines, Andrew Kurpolani, now of Ensighten. I knew I was going to say it wrong. And our usual co-host, Andy Brudkel of 4-Day Web, is home today, hopefully joining us online with a sick child, which I know all too much about because I was in that position last week. First of all, Kurps, new job. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. As we did on the portrait, a couple weeks ago, I'm still kind of, I told the guy on Skype earlier today, I'm still trying to find the metaphorical coffee, but it is, it's a pretty good deal. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, especially once I get completely spun up.
And what is Ensighten?
Basically, they are what we call a tag management system. So any website, I'm sure Silicon Prairie News does this, but anything that's doing any kind of commerce or really even delivering content is tracking various things on their sites. Most of those things are done with third-party tools. A lot of those are delivered via JavaScript tags. Once you get about 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 of those on your site, it starts to get pretty cumbersome to change them. So Ensighten, and there's a couple of other companies that do a similar thing, do what they call tag management, where they basically put a container on that site that you can then swap things in and out of at runtime, making it a lot easier to change what you're tracking, what you're delivering to your customers if you want to deliver like third-party embedded chat or things like that. Just making managing those third-party tools in your sites quite a bit easier.
Very good. And you've been a viewer of PrairieCast for a long time, but I think this is the first time you've been on the show?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Tej, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You just got back into town not too long ago.
I had an awesome trip with the Startup America Partnership Regional Summit, so got to see what the 17 other states are doing. And just compare, contrast notes, and see what we can do to improve our ecosystem further.
Very nice. And so there's 18 total startup regions now.
There's 14 that are official. 3 to 4 are in the final stages of getting through, doing their paperwork, doing their the leadership and how and what they will deliver to their startup ecosystems. Okay. So the states that have been there for a long time, and those of us who joined the partnership within the last literally 60 days, just had an opportunity to discuss where things are and literally learn from each other.
And that was down in Miami? It
was down in Miami at the University of Miami campus. So yeah.
Very good. Normally I would say Miami in February, that's got to be nice, but it's not so bad here in Iowa.
If for my friends who follow me on Facebook, I think the comment I had was there was literally less than 20-degree difference. And inside the meeting room where we stayed most of the time, it was nice and cool.
Looks like there was some time to play, because I think I saw Andy Stoll in the picture maybe sitting beachside or poolside or something at some point.
That must have been after the conference, because the conference was pretty much heads down, 8 a.m. to, I think the first day we left the campus after about 10 o'clock at night. So it was all fun work. It wasn't like conferences where after lunch you want to sleep and after dinner you just want to go back to the hotel. This was fun conversing with some of the leaders of the industry.
Any big takeaways for Iowa that?
What we're doing right. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in states like Colorado and Tennessee, and there's a lot of cool stuff happening here in Iowa. So many of us were really sharing more of our experiences. So there were shout outs to things like Silicon Prairie News that are helping the ecosystem. So Tom Chapman from Nebraska, for example, one of the things he mentioned very clearly was that some of the positive news that has been carried across multiple states has been carried because Silicon Prairie happened to exist in all three and was sharing that. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just acting as a news vehicle, but an ecosystem builder. So whatever you guys can do to keep carrying the flame for startups, it'll help that ecosystem.
Oh, great. And yeah, Tom's been a great supporter of ours, both when he was at the Omaha Chamber and now at Nebraska Global. And excited to see him kind of carry on what Startup Nebraska is and help with that organization there. So, yeah, I'm glad that he was going to be down there. I think we're going to see him in a week or so out at South by Southwest as well.
That's right. You'll see a large part of that contingent that was at the regional summit in Miami, at South by Southwest, at the Startup America programs and locations. So I know there's a few people who are already connecting on that. I'm not going, but Andy and Amanda will be going from the Startup Iowa, under the Startup Iowa umbrella.
Okay. Very good. We'll have to keep up to date with that. And we have some announcements about South by Southwest. Just today we announced the Silicon Prairie Cereal Bar, which is the event that we're going to put on at, I think it's pronounced Halcyon. It's a coffee bar on 6th Street, downtown Austin, with the help of the Greater Des Moines Partnership, Iowa Economic Development, and the Omaha Chamber of Commerce. So we've done kind of social night parties the last couple of years. Startup City sponsored last year, the one that we did. And this year we said, well, why don't we do that without the drinks and see what we can do during the day? And Brittany and our team came up with the cereal bar idea and just launched that today. So you can find information about that on our site, and we'd love to see you there if you're going to be in Austin. And I'm sure we'll see lots of those folks.
I'm sure you will.
From Startup America as well. All right, let's talk about the agenda today. First up, I want to talk about Startup Weekend, which is coming up in just a few days here in Des Moines. And Kerps, you are one of the organizers. So why don't you tell us what's the scoop on Startup Weekend this year?
All right, so it's myself, Levi Rossall, Rob Jensen, and then Shane Reeser is coming back to help us this weekend. We're starting at 5:30 is when we're kind of welcoming everybody into Startup City, and then we're going to kick off the night from there. It's basically been 1 year since we've done one here in Des Moines, but in that time frame, there's also been a Startup Weekend Omaha, which was either a new or maybe a second year event.
I think probably the second year.
Startup Weekend Iowa City was new, which was co-organized by Shannon Thomas, who was on the same team as me last year and who we heard a lot about last year's wonderful Startup Weekend experience for her and Kenny.
Yeah.
So there's been a couple of really solid events in the area, and then we're going to put on the Des Moines event. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see slightly smaller event just because we've had those strong events that we drew from last year. But I think we're going to have a really strong event. We're probably going to be about the same size as Iowa City, which is 50 to 60 participants, I think, is where we're going to be at.
Okay.
Obviously, we're going to try and push that as far up as we can this week. We still do have a few scholarships that we can give out. So if there's some people out there that are watching or thinking about attending that didn't want to spend $75 or didn't have it to spend, especially students, get in touch with myself or any of the other organizers.
How should they do that?
Twitter is SW Des Moines, and that'll get to any one of us.
Okay.
Otherwise, my Twitter handle is on the whatever the thing is, the site here. The thing,
Whatever the thing
in the box,
On the internet.
It's a series of tubes. They can find me there, and we'll get them a scholarship and get them in the event. And obviously, even if we run out of those events, we've talked amongst the organizers, or scholarships, we've talked amongst the organizers. We don't want anybody not coming due to money or anything like that. So we'd rather pay out of our own pocket for somebody to attend that's going to come in and participate.
And the money question comes up every year because
Absolutely.
For an event, it may seem like a high price tag, but really it equates out over the amount of meals and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what you'd spend in the weekend if you're
Sure.
going out to eat, like for all those meals. So the cost is certainly justified, and good on you and the rest of the organizers for helping people that can't afford that to get it. I know most people in this office where we film the show are going. I'm going to be there speaking with Emma. I think the two of us are speaking Friday
Absolutely.
night, welcoming and just kind of chatting about our thoughts on
Basically,
entrepreneurship.
our goal for you speakers is to just sort of set a tone, and one of the things that we really want to carry is the attitude of this ecosystem. We want to bring in the people that are at Startup City daily. We want to bring in the people like yourself that's involved in the ecosystem daily. We want to bring in people like Emma who have a story to tell, but also to show that, hey, these are people that we all like to hang out with anyway. Like, even if we weren't doing business, we'd probably be hanging out on the weekends. Like there's a synergy, which is a terrible corporate word, but there's a synergy amongst these types of people, whether it's business, whether it's fun, that they all want to be in the same place anyway, and we want to showcase that as part of the event.
Sounds good. And Tej, you are hosting and judging, maybe? Is that correct?
Judging, and yes, Startup City is hosting, so there will be many people from Startup City. As a normal part of our work days or work evenings, there will be quite a few people in anyway on Friday night or Saturday. But yeah, Startup City is glad to have the space to host. We'll make a few changes around the office just to fit Startup Weekend in. That's probably going to all happen on Friday, but yeah, we'll be around. So Christian and I for sure will be around, able to answer questions related to the ecosystem in general, not just Startup City, and see how we can plug in and help these companies that might come out of Startup Weekend.
I think this is a good chance if you participate to really get to know what Startup City has to offer, especially if you're not in a role where you can pop in. You guys have open like things that people can come see all the time in Startup City, but
Sure.
if you're maybe in a job where you're not able to come over for lunch or like an afternoon session, you can come for the weekend and not only participate in a team, but get to know the resources that are there.
And it's not just, definitely those of us who are at Startup City all the time, obviously will be there quite a bit. But there are other members that make Startup City what it is, and those are the mentors and the participants. So, you're not at Startup City on a daily basis, but the fact that you'll be there on Friday night, there will be attendees from the Des Moines Partnership, who can lend that other color to this entire ecosystem. It's not just all startups and it's not just all tech companies. There is a larger group of people that make this thing happen.
It's a great point.
And many of them are going to be there on Friday night and Sunday night for sure. So.
Robert asks in the chat room, what are the prizes this year?
The prizes this year, I think there are some credits from Amazon. There are a couple of different things like that. The prizes actually is something I just got information on this morning, so I don't have a lot of information on that yet. It's not so much as where we had last year, where we had a number of monetary prizes to give out. Now, if we do end up, over budget or whatever, we'll talk about that kind of thing. But mostly, it's just various services. Like I said, Amazon credits. Everybody's got Amazon credits to use for the weekend, and then one of the winning teams will get additional, I believe it's $200 worth of services, something like that. There's a number of different service-based prizes like that, but it's mostly about tools and things like that, as opposed to any kind of just direct monetary or whatever.
Okay.
And your ultimate price is going back to what, as a human, you were created to do, right? Which is independently running your thing,
Make
your
something
way.
from nothing. Yeah.
Make something from nothing. The Amazon credits will expire, and the free Intuit licenses will expire, and the free T-shirts will wear away. But it's a lifestyle that you're creating for yourself. I wouldn't look at the price to come in, Robert.
And not to say that Innova makes not quality T-shirts.
It doesn't matter. You're right. The T-shirt I had 20 years ago when I was launching my first business has probably lived its life even as a rag. But the lifestyle that feeling gave me then sits with me today, and that's what's important.
It is, and I think that the greatest value I see in Startup Weekend is not necessarily the companies that come out of it, but the experience of being there and meeting people. And I know that I believe I've seen some statistic in the past that many more companies have been started out of people who met at Startup Weekend and then did something later than actually came and survived like the Startup Weekend process. So it's a good just kind of mixing bowl of getting everybody together and meeting people that have like minds or not, or people that have different things to offer and mixing them. And obviously seeing where they go from there. I think a lot of us in this community, I went to the first Startup Weekend in Des Moines back in 2009, I think, before I even lived here. Just because I wanted to meet people in Des Moines, because we were thinking about moving here, had a great experience. See a lot of those people still today, and a lot of those people involved in the startup community. So
absolutely, you've got stories like Zarley and Rick Bob and things like that actually came out of a Startup Weekend, and there are various things you could say about that. Obviously, Bo had a very strong vision of what Zarley was going to be when he went to Startup Weekend Los Angeles and built that company out there. But you've also got plenty of people who now got involved in the community. For instance, Shannon, Mike Naughton, myself, Miles Matthias, and Rob. Rob and I are organizing Startup Weekend here. Shannon organized Startup Weekend in Iowa City. Mike's involved in 7,000 things here in
still
Des Moines.
Working on the company.
And
right?
still working on Fundle from time to time, as far as I understand it. And then Miles went out and is involved in some form or fashion with some companies that are tied up with Techstars in Boulder. So, you've got these people that I think it's like a springboard. I think it's a way to kind of take people that might be motivated and really throw them in immediately, give them a solid experience to begin with, and then that sort of springboards them into the next sets of things they're going to do, whether or not they're particularly a company right from that weekend.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned them here. So do want to give credit to Rec Bob, which is John Schnipkowit. I always have trouble with John's last name. Sorry, but that was one of the startup weekend Iowa City companies that emerged. I don't even think they won necessarily, but it was a strong enough passion project for John and he sees the business model, so he left his job. Another company he created to found RecBob, and I think they have 4 or 5 employees that he's hired now.
They just brought on Macy.
Macy Cook.
Yeah. And I've seen things flying about Twitter and whatnot about that company. It sounds like they're really enthusiastic, really excited about what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there are companies that do come out of this, and Zarly is probably at one end of the scale, well, very much at one end of the scale of startup weekend companies globally. And then other companies don't survive the weekend, but in between you have the RecBobs, you have little Cusics like Jake Kerber and his company from last year. I think Be Heroic, Robert, who's in the chat room, still working on that. Like there are lots of those things that do stick around. Could be something long term for people if they want it to be. And
though we're not promoting it as such, America out of this.
we have proof.
We've talked about it.
Yeah, seen it absolutely. Go back and read that story about Shannon and Kenny if you want to see it. I think was that in the Startup Weekend infographic? I don't know if it was.
I don't know.
They really should have put that in. Kind of what last year was like.
Might have to get some releases and waivers signed by Shannon and Kenny for likeness rights or something.
Well, and the other piece of that is that Shane Reeser is coming back to facilitate. So Shane used to co-work with us in this office right here. Shane and I originally signed a lease for this to start before he moved out to Seattle. So it'd be exciting. I'm excited to see Shane again. I've not seen him since he moved. When was that, last summer out there? So
yeah, something like that.
August.
August.
Right.
Yeah. So very cool that Shane's coming back. Get to see him there and kind of catch up on everything in his life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's one of the most dynamic people I've ever met, so I'm really happy to have him involved still with this event. I mean,
I'm looking forward to see if we attract participants from whether it is the Alliance that's statewide or whether it is all of these college campuses that we have now made solid connections into from the startup ecosystem. See if we are able to draw individuals out of these campuses, out of the larger Iowa Startup Alliance.
I know we gave 5 scholarships to Iowa State students just in the last week or so. We just put those out, so we're definitely getting some traction up there at Iowa State, and there is eventual talk about running an Ames Startup Weekend. So we might get into a situation where we have a bi-yearly event, but it's in the spring it's in Des Moines, and in the fall it's in Ames or something like that. We really want to drive that connection because obviously that's a great opportunity for college students.
Do you know, like Central College, where Taja's involved, anybody from like the smaller schools that
we've reached out, but I don't have all of the sign-up data, so I don't know if there's going to be some students. I would assume there's going to be at least a few.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. I think there are those types of students interested, and Tej can hook you up with Central, and then obviously Simpson. There's various people.
Already done.
Okay, all done. So we'll move on from there. Anything else on Startup Weekend?
If you have not signed up, you've got an idea, you need to be present, because if somebody else comes in with that idea and executes on it, you're going to want to shoot yourself next Monday morning.
And you don't have to have an idea to sign up. I have had that question before. People say, do I need to come with a pitch? No, you can just come and want to participate on a team. Like that is available as well.
Yeah. Well, Bo's story from Big Oma last year was he did not go in planning to pitch Zarly. He was charged up as he was sitting listening to the pitches and decided to pitch at the very end. So you never know what's going to come up. There was an individual last year who was so charged up because he wanted to pitch and he was number one, right? Pitching. I think it was Phil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there were others who decided to pitch during those 30-some pitches last year. So
yeah,
we had an incredible number of pitches. I think people would start to get motivated, and then they would pitch early, and they would be like, "No, I have a better pitch," and then would come back around to the event, the back of the line, and do it again. But
that event was my introduction to the greater tech community in and around what has now become Silicon Sixth. I ended up spending a large amount of time at Startup Weekend last time. That was my first Startup Weekend, my first intro to the community, and I'd say a majority of my friends in this community and the friendships came out of that event.
I'd say I have a very similar story. I participated. It was the first thing I'd done at really one of the early events that I participated in the community, and obviously now I'm organizing it this year because I had such a great experience.
Well, very good. Levi does say in the chat room that there's a pretty good representation across most of the area schools as far as signups, so that's good to hear. Let's move on, and I want to thank today's show sponsor, and that is Delta Dental of Iowa. When it comes to taking care of your smile, rely on a company that you can trust. Fact is, more Iowans trust their smiles to Delta Dental. Whether you're looking for a dental policy for you, your family, or your startup, visit deltadentalia.com to learn more about your many plan options. Thank you again, Delta Dental, as we do every week, for supporting Silicon Prairie News and entrepreneurs in Iowa. All right, guys, I want to do the Fast Four segment, and we started this up a little bit last week. We started to do a point system. Since Andy's out this week, and Andy keeps track of points, I've drafted producer John with us. He is going to, from the control room, which is all the way on the other side of the studio here. We can all see him.
Hello.
A little bit of he's going to run the board, and he's going to participate in everything, so we'll see how it goes. So just as a reminder of the way this works, it is a competition now. I will ask the question. I'll set it up. I'll ask the question to each of you. You will give an answer. I will give you a score. John keeps track of scores, and at the end of the segment, we will have a winner for PrairieCast, or for the Fast Four this week. Sound good?
Sure.
Everybody on board? John, everything working tech-wise?
Yep.
Very good. All right. Item number 1, DHH Gone Racing. David Hennemeyer Hansen, creator of Ruby on Rails, partner at Chicago-based 37 Signals, and author of Rework, announced last week that he will team up with Martin Plowman to compete in the 12 Hours of Sebring race on March 17th. The last Midwestern startup to be involved in racing was Kansas City-based LiveOn.com, who was the lead sponsor on the 24 Hours Daytona last month, and they won it. So the question is, which Midwestern tech startup will be next to take on auto racing?
Racescore.com.
Race Score?
Racescore. It's a fantasy NASCAR league run by a friend here in Des Moines, Mike Last, and he's the solo guy who's been creating and collating the stats and running this site for a few years and doing a bang-up job. This is the stealth success story. So racescore.com.
Racescore.com. All right. Curbs?
I actually think it's Presentio, because Christian says he's selling the Porsche, but I think he's just getting it wrapped in sponsors and just going to be sending it on the track.
Very good. Very good. And John, you?
I think that Douala is going to bring back the Rouen Grand Prix as the Douala Grand Prix.
Oh, these are all good answers. I think I'm going to give 3 points to Tej, because that is probably the most realistic of the answers. I'm going to give 2 points to John, just because I want to see the Rouen Grand Prix come back. How cool would an auto race be in downtown Des Moines again? That happened when I was very little, and it's been gone for years and years and years. And that means you get 1 point. That's what's left. But if Christian does show up in the Porsche, then I will reverse the point total on that one for sure.
I will keep track of that.
All right, sounds good. Okay, number 2. Big Omaha teaser website launches. On Friday, the Silicon Prairie News team, that's us, along with our partners Oxide Design and Malone & Co., launched the teaser website for Big Omaha 2012. It includes very large, very pink, and somewhat obscured text at the top that is provoking strong positive and negative reactions around the web. So the question to you, and Kurtz, you can go first, what is the full text at the top of the Big Omaha site?
I was just going to say it was Think Pink.
Think pink?
Yeah, all I could see was pink font, man.
All right, think pink. Tej?
Honestly, I did not go see it because I was embedded deep into the Startup America stuff. So my guess is it says log on to tickly.co for your tickets.
All right. John?
I grabbed the images so I know what it actually says.
That'd be cheating.
Yep.
So that he disqualifies, right?
But I expanded them. Here's what I have. I am excited to hear what the speakers will bring to the table. You have to say, Big Omaha is a great event each year, really about making a community grow. Connections, I love it. They're everything in this business. Big Omaha just makes our heads spin on how it has flourished. Me feel good, you know? Yes, you feel good. I know.
Well, I think that deserves the 3 points. That was what I was looking to see, was something creative for sure. And Kurt, you can have 2 this time, because I think you had a good guess. And did you just kind of punt on this question?
No, I truly did expect
the Tickly
to
one,
buy the tickets on
yeah.
Tickly right
Buy
now.
the tickets on Tickly. We'll have to see if that's what it says. So we'll give 1 point to Tej for sure. All right, question number 3, TechCrunch turnover. Yesterday, TechCrunch announced their top editor was leaving, the 8th such notable turnover from the tech blog in recent months. Replacing him was Eric Eldon, someone who had only been on staff at TechCrunch for 3 months, prompting TechCrunch founder and former staffer Michael Arrington to quip, "Who the hell is Eric Eldon?" Here's the question. Will handing the reins of TechCrunch to someone who wasn't even on the staff in the blog's glory days finally be what they need to reset this, what seems to be failing organization? John, you can go first this time.
I'm going to say no. Arrington was TechCrunch. TechCrunch was Arrington. It's now in the midst of its slow, painful death throes.
Okay. Tej?
I would say TechCrunch was the ecosystem builder when it came to startups. As evolution goes in any ecosystem, when you start disintegrating at your roots, you are going to kill off your organization. So the organization has to support its own, and has to support its own through nurturing and building its people. When you start killing off the people who are feeding you the news, the stories, the reason for you to survive, you're going to kill yourself. That happened to TechCrunch. It happened to Byte Magazine 20 years ago. It could happen to SP News. It could happen to Startup City. We have to focus on why we exist. And the moment we do, the moment we forget, we're out.
Okay. So, no, this is not a turnaround point for them?
No.
I agree with the guys. I think TechCrunch is RIM now. I mean, you could still buy a BlackBerry, but they're not going up. I mean, I think there will be something that fills the void of TechCrunch. I don't think TechCrunch is going to be it.
All right. I think you guys are all on the same page, and I would agree. So let's give everybody 2 points on that one. Last question. The Academy Awards were held last Sunday, and that prompted our own Christopher New to give his picks for the top 6 films about entrepreneurship, which he includes Batman Begins, Risky Business, Ghostbusters, Citizen Kane / The Aviator, and The Godfather Part 2. Which movie do you give the Oscar to for entrepreneurship?
I'm actually going off list and saying Cocktails, because that thing had
Tom Cruise movie?
Yeah, absolutely. It had partner friction, it had starting a new business, it had the brilliant dreams, and had the harsh reality. It had it all, man.
It had the startup spouse issue.
It did.
Yeah. Okay. Tej?
I think in deference to my partner Christian, I'm going to give this one to Glengarry Glen Ross. Marketing makes or breaks any business.
Always be closing.
Always be closing.
All
Coffee
right.
is for closers, Jack.
John, yours.
I'm going to have to go with Blues Brothers. Jake and Elwood are on a mission from God. Everyone else thinks they're nuts. It just feels familiar.
Wow, these are all really good answers, and none of them were answers I'd thought about beforehand. So, let's see.
Ask the audience.
Ask
who
the
think
audience.
points
Yeah, we'll go ahead.
Crowdsource the answer.
First one to chime in the chat room on who wins gets the 3 points here, and we'll see. Yeah, Cocktails, good. Your answer was Glengarry Glen Ross, and John had the Blues Brothers.
I don't know. Cocktails has got a lot of booze, but if I can ever start a business that has as many car chases as the Blues Brothers, you will never see me again. That would be awesome.
That movie, I actually feel like I need to go Netflix all of these. Okay, Levi says it's Curbs, so that's the first one. So we'll go 3 points to Curbs, 2 points to Tej, and John, just because 1 point is what's left, I will give that to you. So, John, if you will tabulate the scores, we'll have the winners for today's show.
Tabulating.
Yeah. The independent.
You can hear click, click, click.
This we did this on paper last week, and it was a little easier.
And it is a 3-way tie. Everybody has 8 points.
Everybody has 8 points.
Apparently, we've exposed a flaw in the
Very
system.
much what I tried not to do was to give everybody exact 8, but apparently I did that. So everybody is a winner. It's cool because we don't have any prizes. Last week, Chris Burns won, and we had a Delta Dental toothbrush that we gave to him. So we'll have to work on, tiebreaker question would be good. So go ahead and put a tiebreaker question in the chat room, and we'll try to answer it by the end of the show. All right. Moving past the fast forward, that was fun. We ran a post today written by our new contributor, Adrian Boffman, about the startup visa legislation, which is currently in Congress. The bills which are quoted are H.R. 1114, S565, and H.R. 3012. Those are the ones that kind of focus on the granting of visas to immigrants for some sort of employment basis. And there are 2 parts. One is the H1B visa, which I think is what's got a lot of the notoriety in Silicon Valley. If you've watched Sherman Pashavar's speech at Big Omaha last year, it might have been in discussing with Anish Chopra as well from the White House. Really, we're talking about the H1B visa, which is an employer-sponsored visa to allow people to come to the country to work under that visa. Anyway, so that's part of it. The other part of it is an entrepreneur's visa, which would allow immigrants to come to this country and found companies, students who are here on an immigration visa for school to found companies, as long as there's two criteria, that they have required amounts of financial backing from a qualifying investor, government entity, or venture capitalist, and also have commercial activities that will generate required levels of employment, revenue, or capital investment. So basically that they're sponsored through some sort of funding to start their company, and that within a certain amount of time they will have revenues that are contributing to the economy. This is obviously a national issue, and we've had people kind of asking about this before, and as we were looking at it and trying to and getting ready to write a story on it, we learned that there is a local angle, and that's what really prompted the story at this time. One of those local angles is, Tej, that you are interested in this and are talking to people about it. And two, Iowa Senator Grassley is holding up this legislation from going any further based on kind of his rights as the ranking senator on a committee that deals with this. So that was the gist of the story. And if you haven't read it, I do encourage you to check it out on our site. But Tej, did I sum this up correctly from your?
You did.
And just kind of give us your opinion of this and where the legislation is at. And
Sure. I started sponsoring H1B visas in '99 here in Des Moines when we were hiring for software development jobs and could not pull enough quality candidates from around the Des Moines area. So we hired one on H1B, two on H1B, and ultimately about 10 or 11 in that period, in the '99-2000 period. Applied for their green cards and saw the process as it progresses. One of those individuals still remains stuck in the green card process. So what happens is the US allows 65,000 slots for an H1B visa every year. Of those 65,000, about 8,000 are set aside for Chile and Singapore for whatever reason. I haven't bothered to go see why. The remainder are issued on a first come, first applied basis, and application happens on April 1st. In a few years, in the early 2000s, when there was a serious shortage of developers, those 65,000 visa slots would be filled that very day on April 1st. And attorneys would get their files back saying, your clients can't have a visa, whatever.
mostly from developers. That's who's filling.
Mostly for the high-tech positions. Master's candidates have a different quota. Bachelor's candidates have different quotas. But yes. So that was one of the initial things. So many of those H1B candidates who came in the country, largely from India, some from Indonesia and a few other countries, but largely from India, have gone through the processes of going through H1Bs, having their green card application now pending. So there are about 500,000 H1Bs today waiting for a green card to be issued to them in the US from India. The number of green cards that are issued in the US in a year is 140,000. Of those 140,000, no more than 7% can actually go to a single country's applicants. So India, which has the deepest queue, gets about 4,500 in a year. So the queue is building. These individuals, 500,000 individuals, are actually currently in jobs in H1B positions at the Wells Fargos, at the small companies, at the principals of the world. So they are currently sitting, doing their jobs, reapplying year after year for them to remain in this queue. So the employer is paying somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a year trying to keep these employees they want to keep in the queue. There aren't enough high-tech candidates to fill that queue. So if I, as an H1B sponsor, lets go of my H1B developer, there isn't a sufficient pool of skilled resources that can fill that pool that I can hire from and fill my positions.
Of local?
Of local development resources. At the same time, many of these H1B candidates are realizing that they can actually go back to their home countries, do their businesses from their home countries, or work for somebody in their home country and actually now have a better standard of living because of the economic divide now shrinking across the world. If you look at the number of apps in the App Store that are being run from companies out of India or Eastern Europe, the count is increasing. The Angry Birds of the world, right? I mean, these app counts are increasing from overseas. So we are hurting our own tech sector by, one, not giving those in green card lines enough slots so they can actually get a green card and stay here and be the free agents that the three of us are, being able to move between whichever company we want to move to. But also we're preventing them from starting a business, because in H1B, they can file for a business, but they can't participate in a business. So if I was an H1B candidate, I could go to the Secretary of State's office, file paperwork to start an LLC, but I couldn't participate in that business. I couldn't write code for that business. We know that any of us starting a company are going to be embedded in that business, materially participating. You can't do that as an H1B candidate. And then finally, we're hurting ourselves by letting the highly skilled pool of people here leave and go back, creating a reverse brain drain. So I was at the Startup America event last week talking to the Startup Massachusetts representative, surrounded by 16 of this country's awesome colleges. And he says that they track brain drain out of Massachusetts at 80%. That's
80% of people educated in Massachusetts.
80% of the people educated in Massachusetts are leaving, and a large majority being foreign students coming from India and China, not leaving Massachusetts to come to Iowa or California, but actually leaving because the visa policies are so restrictive that they don't want to stunt their careers by staying in the U.S. So that's the large problem. So the bills that you referenced earlier, they're multi-pronged. So one bill is the HR 3012. That lets that 140,000 pool that I referred to be used such that the 7% limit is removed and replaced with a 15% limit. So by country.
Yeah.
So effectively doubling the number of slots that could be given to a country and reducing the queue. It is not creating new immigration slots like Senator Grassley asserted in some of his messages before. The bill never calls for increasing from 140,000. It only calls for increasing the limits within that 140,000.
Because are all 140,000 used now, or there's
Not
countries
always.
that don't?
Not
Okay.
always. No. So the large number of applicants tend to be from India and China. The other countries don't always have slots to fill. So HR 3012, which gives highly skilled immigrant candidates ability to get a green card using these employment categories, are taken up by doctors, by developers, by engineers who are much in demand here. If for whatever reason you were to check into Mercy or Methodist Hospital, I would say, having just been there with my dad last week, I think 4 out of the 5 physicians who worked on my dad's case were Indian. I talked with all 4 of them, and 2 directly stated to me that they were considering exiting because in an H1B status, their spouse is not allowed to work here. They are better off leaving for Canada or Mexico or back to India or Indonesia, where they have a freedom of practicing their profession. So we can't afford that.
And yeah, so it's a significant issue, and people obviously kind of feel differently on different sides of it, for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Grassleys' position. So he's the ranking senator on the Judiciary Committee, and that is one of the committees that's dealing with these bills. We did reach out to Grassley. Adrian did, as she wrote this story, and this is what Grassley told us, or his representatives told us. Any bill that attempts to improve the U.S. economy should be given high consideration. Senator Grassley looks forward to possible hearings on the Startup Visa Act, which is yet to be considered by the Senate Judiciary Committee. At this time, it's unclear if Judiciary Committee Chairman Leahy or Immigration Subcommittee Chairman Schumer will have the hearings on the bill to allow committee members to ask questions and learn more about the details of how it will impact Iowans. Now, to read this on the surface, it looks like Grassley's saying, hey, sounds interesting, but I'm not in a position to consider this. And as we've been talking to various other people, that's kind of politicking. It's not necessarily the case with his position on that committee.
In a heavily divided Congress, this bill, as you can tell from the title itself, HR 3012, House Rule 3012, it was introduced in the House. It had a good number of sponsors. The number of sponsors that signed on during the bill doubled. The bill passed an amazingly divided Congress, 389 to 15. there is serious movement, at least in the House, to get this thing moved. It arrives in the Senate, and it has 4 sponsors, including Senator Harkin. There should be no reason for Senate to posture against this bill at this time. We need this, and more than us U.S. citizens who are trying to support the ecosystem, the 500,000 developers and doctors who are already in this community need it so that they can become free agents and work wherever they need to work rather than be beholden to their H1B sponsoring employer.
Well, and it seems just sort of, it seems sort of the same as like an Iowa State football coach saying, yeah, that kid may be 6'2", 230 and runs a 4.4 40, but I don't want him because he's from Texas. It just seems dumb. Like, why wouldn't you want the best players on your team? And I think that, I mean, and this sort of like just quasi-educated speculation, but I mean, the Senate, you would think, would be typically an older body, aggregate age, than the House, and it's kind of people work up through politics. I've been wondering this on social issues, things like same-sex marriage and the legalization of marijuana, but now it's starting to impact things like technology, which now impacts business. Are these things that people of that generation just don't understand well enough to effectively legislate? I mean, it seems sort of like you've got these people that are looking at something in almost a union mentality or a manufacturing mentality where you have to sort of be a protectionist type of government, rather than saying that's not the way business is done anymore. Business is done over the internet, and we have to do everything we can to have as much of it located here because we have resources, because we have people, because we have support. And I just wonder if we actually are now in a system where not only is it social issues, which, not being of those particular persuasions, have not been particularly damaging to me, but still disturbing, but now you have them legislating on some things that are really have the potential to damage business, damage the growth of the economy. And I just wonder if we have actually reached a position where the generation in power is so far out of touch because that's not the generations they grew up in.
I wouldn't say that. I think Senator Grassley has been very, very much involved with immigration-related issues, and there is a part of the political spectrum that wants larger immigration reform that's across the board. However, in this particular calendar year, election year, we know that's not going to happen. We know that can happen for the next 1 or 2 years. However, if you talk to guys like Ben who are trying to hire skilled tech people, you talk to the large corporations like Principal and Wells Fargo who are trying to hire skilled people, they have trouble finding skilled resources. At the same time, if you look at the stats of what our high school and college graduates are seeking for degrees, they're not seeking the STEM degrees. They're not seeking computer science. Computer science classes have gone down in size and interest over the last 20 years. So we're not producing the STEM candidates. We are needing those candidates in larger numbers every year. We are training most of those foreign candidates at almost all of our state and private universities. If I was running USCIS, I would say all of these individuals that we're training, along with the diploma, by the way, here's a green card. I'll staple this to your diploma and say, go find whatever you can find.
Absolutely. Well, and that's sort of my point, is that you have this mentality, which if you read some of the text of the bills, it's a very protectionist mentality of a set of jobs that doesn't need to be protected. It needs to be opened up because we need to fill them.
The typical statement would be that that foreigners coming in would take Americans' jobs. But there aren't enough Americans in these jobs, and these jobs don't have unemployment numbers above 0.0 from qualified candidates.
Exactly.
There may be lots of unqualified candidates in the science and medical fields. There may be. But the qualified candidates are few and far between, as you can see from the number of job openings that are listed on tech boards.
Yeah.
This particular rule can't wait 2 years for larger immigration reform. It
Agreed.
has to be acted on sooner.
Agreed.
Chris New asked in the chat room, and I think it's probably the next thing, and it's obviously speculative, but why would Grassley hold this up? Like, what's the other side of this issue? Protectionist or take, but like, why?
I haven't heard directly back from Senator Grassley. I'm not, I have written to his office. I've told him the story of me having created a business, me having applied for H1B visas. and going through their green card positions, having hired in a tight marketplace. I have told him my story. I have not heard a response directly back from him. I'm not going to speculate on what the message boards are saying. I'd much rather hear it directly from his office. So when that happens, I can answer that better.
And that's what we did ask that question, and I read the response, which was kind of jumping around the issue rather than giving a specific answer to it. But it, that's
not an answer. Yeah, that answer was a non-answer.
I gave my opinion, but I mean, obviously that's a little bit harsher than maybe hedges or whatever. I really wonder, and this is something I've been wondering for a long time, if we just don't have the right people in power, just by the pace of business and pace of change.
Well, and I think there because this is a divided country politically on lots of issues now, the immediate thought is that this is a party lines type of thing, and it very much isn't. If you look at who's co-sponsoring, who's not, it's people from both parties. And even Iowa Republicans, we reached out to Debbie Durham, who's the head of Iowa's economic development effort, and she told us we have to grow the Iowa population. These visas make sense to us. On the surface, it's something we would support. We also asked the governor's office. He was on the way to the National Governors Association meetings in D.C. Did not have time to get back to us with a specific quote on this. But these are influential Iowa Republicans that obviously feel very differently on this issue. So it's not necessarily a party lines thing so much as there's something else at play here or something to.
No, yes, it could be. It could be. The third prong that I didn't get to earlier is the startup visa. So there is a category of visas out of the 140,000 that allocates about 9,000 slots to individuals who want to come in from overseas and create businesses. So the White House introduced something called the startup visa, which the tech community has just embraced at a major level. So the startup visa is intended essentially to take those 9,000 slots and give them to foreign citizen business creators or business owners who want to set up shop in the U.S. There are requirements that somebody come in with 100,000 or more in capital from a U.S. source, and within X amount of time, I think it's a year, create 3 jobs, $500,000 in revenue, or $500,000 in additional venture capital. And if they promise to do that, one of those 9,000 slots can be given to them for for being able to work or create something in the U.S. I think from just the definitions of that visa alone, it's obvious that these are individuals not coming in to become wards of the state. They are one coming in with capital. They're coming in with a specific task to create positions, and be viable in a fairly short period of time. The original requirements were much higher. They have been reduced for venture capital.
Is the 9,000? Is that a segment of that larger?
It is. It is a segment. Yeah, the visas are granted in various categories. Some are employment-based visa, category 2, 3, 4, 5. This happens to fall in a very specific category from which people would be, again, given the allocation, not new creation, not new slots, but previously unused slots.
Okay.
So, the critics of this, and my very personal friend Gopal, who did comment on the same article, they would say, how does that stop the rich uncle in the U.S. from sponsoring his 3 nieces and nephews? It doesn't.
Yeah, it has absolutely no effect on that. But
it doesn't. But those same nieces and nephews have the exact same requirement of creating the positions, getting more venture capital, or getting the revenue established so that they are viable businesses. If it's a rich uncle who happens to do it instead of a otherwise accredited investor, who cares?
We talk about family and friends money all the time anyway. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Still contributing to the economy.
There you
go. We're going to run out a little bit of time here, so do you guys have any other thoughts on this before
quite frankly, even though it's been loosened, I'd like to see it even looser. I mean, I think that I go back to what I said before. Like, if you can get good people on your team, you want good people on your team. End of story. I don't know why we beat around the bush about that.
There are lots of critics of Grassley and what he's doing here, so or what he's not doing here, I guess would be the case. We did talk to Vivek Wadhwa of Singularity University in Silicon Valley, who is a very outspoken person about this. He told us that, to quote him, Senator Grassley has established himself as the single greatest barrier to skilled immigration. So there are people with a focus on this nationally, looking at Iowa and looking at these decisions made here, or being made by people that represent our state. So certainly, if you have an opinion on this, you would want to let the senator know or do whatever you want to do. With that, I encourage you to check out the links to the actual legislation, which is inside our post. Adrian got all of those from the Thomas Service with the Library of Congress. Also, you can check out startupvisa.com, which is a site put together in support of the Startup Visa, created by Eric Reese, Dave McClure, Sherman Peshavar, Brad Feld, Fred Wilson, many names that we know as large venture capitalists that presumably would want to fund these.
And if you look at the news from last Thursday, the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service, which ultimately is responsible for these visas, they actually celebrated Vivek Wadhwa and Shervin as individuals of foreign descent, making serious contributions to the tech innovation and industry. So at one point, rewarding them for what they're doing, and at the second time having their own hands tied for not being able to grow alongside. So the USCIS recognizes the job that these guys are doing. And startupvisa.com is a pretty complete collection of articles and opinions from Vivek and a bunch of other people. So I would go check it out, and yes, contacting Grassley's office at this time, especially if you are a citizen of Iowa, a voting citizen of Iowa, and telling your story is important.
Very good. We'll end the show today with Andy's stat of the week. Of course, Andy's not here, so maybe it's Jeff's stat of the week. But the stat this week is $23,342,162. Anybody know what that stat means? All right, that is the total amount of money posted on Zarly from its birth at Startup Week in Los Angeles a year ago to about an hour ago when I checked their leaderboard.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
That statistic comes from zarly.com/leaderboard, where they not only have a big total ticker, which is the number I just read you, but also tickers by city. Any guesses on the top cities before you go check it out?
Well,
Kansas City.
Kansas City is on there.
It's always
Kansas
New
City
York
is number
City or
5.
San Francisco.
1 and 2. The most surprising one to me is number 3, which is Oklahoma City, which I would not have expected.
Really?
At almost 1.3 million.
I'd like to know what was.
Yeah, I want to know what they're
purchased.
doing. Like, what are they doing in Oklahoma City?
That's a
You
good
need to
question.
go look at the prior sales.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to ask. So if anybody from Zarly is watching, we would like to know that. The 4th city is Los Angeles, not to leave them out. But those are the top 5 cities. Danny pointed that out to me, that leaderboard. So interesting thing to kind of keep track of. They actually have a top 10 cities there as well. So that's it for today's show. I want to thank everybody for joining us online, and thanks again to Delta Dental of Iowa for your support. Tej, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Glad you made it back from Miami safe and sound. Where should people find out more about you online?
At startupcitydsm.com.
And Kirps, how about you?
AndrewKirpolani.com. Don't try and spell it, just hit me up on Twitter.
Or @_Kirps.
Yeah.
Yeah, is where you can find him. Andy is at youmetandy.com. I'm at gwood.me. PrairieCast is produced by John Thompson of Evolve, who you got to see today if you haven't seen John before. Find out more about his services at dmevolve.com. For more on our show, check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/PrairieCast. For all the news and culture related to startups on the Silicon Prairie, you can always go to siliconprairienews.com, and we will see you right back here next week. Thanks, everyone.